بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أسعد الله أوقاتكم بكل خير. نتشرف نكون موجودين اليوم في مقر جامعة الكويت، المقر الجديد الجميل في مركز دراسات الخليج والجزيرة العربية، اللي أتشرف بالانضمام لعضوية اللجنة العلمية في هذا المركز القديم والعريق، مثل جامعة الكويت. عندما نقول جامعة الكويت نتذكر موسوعات، برامج، ملفات، بحوث، أساتذة كبار منذ عام 1966. فشكرا على هذه الاستضافة. أنا المقدمة لأنه الجميع بيتحدث باللغة العربية، فسأقدم مقدمة باللغة العربية. Then I'll leave it to Dr. Sharik from Indiana University to continue in English, but he will know what I will be talking about. فهو بيعرف عن ماذا سأتحدث في المقدمة اللي أكثر من مرة قدمت الدكتور شارق. إحنا جينا من البحرين وأيضا قطر، عاد بين هون وهناك، وهذه اللقاء الثاني يمكن في دولة الكويت. فشكرا مرة ثانية لجامعة الكويت، شكرا للدكتور يعقوب الكندري رئيس مركز دراسات الخليج والجزيرة العربية، وأيضا شكرا ل let me just record، أعمل بس record. okay. طيب فشكرا مرة ثانية لجامعة الكويت، شكرا لجامعة إنديانا على يكونوا يعني يمتد مجال نشر المعرفة في سياق العمل الخيري في أكثر من دولة. وأيضا شكرا لجامعتي جامعة جورج ميسون في واشنطن على الشراكة في برنامج مثل هذا البرنامج. احنا جينا من البحرين، دربنا أكثر من 100 من قيادات الجمعيات الخيرية على إدارة وقيادة العمل الخيري. فدائما نفتخر أنه في هذه البرامج نجمع كل المهنيين في تطوير وبحوث العمل الخيري من مختلف الأنواع وأنماط ومستويات الجمعيات الخيرية. بعد هذه التجارب كلها، وعندما أتحدث عن جامعة إنديانا بالتعريف من جامعة لدكتور شارق، إذا قلنا جامعة إنديانا إحنا كأنه بنقول جامعة هي هارفارد دراسات العمل الخيري، لأنه جامعة إنديانا من أكثر ما يميزها كلية ليلي سكول اللي حكى عنها الدكتور شارق بعد شوي، كلية ليلي لدراسات العمل الخيري. عندهم برامج دكتوراه، عندهم برامج ماجستير، عندهم برامج مؤشرات عالمية. تشرفت أني كتبت أيضا تقرير للكويت وعدة دول عربية لأكثر من عدة سنوات في مؤشرات بيئة العمل الخيري، ومن ضمنها الكويت زي ما حيحكي الدكتور شارق. فإحنا الآن ضمن برنامج مع أعتقد جامعة عريقة في مجال الموضوع اللي احنا بنحكي فيه. ثم نيجي لمقدم الورشة الدكتور شارق صديقي. أنا بقدر أقول بكل ثقة أنه الدراسات العمل الخيري الإسلامي في أمريكا تختلف عن ما قبل شارق وما بعد شارق، فهو ساهم بشكل كبير في تطوير هذا المجال، لأنه هذا المجال أنتم دائما في الميدان وعمليين. فأحيانا البحث في هذا المواضيع، التطوع، التبرع، جمع التبرعات وكل هذه أحيانا تحتاج إلى هذا الفجوة البحثية والمعرفية مع التطبيق العملي. فالدكتور شارق حاول ببعض الأبرزها تأسيس مبادرة العمل الخيري الإسلامي MPI في جامعة إنديانا، مسلم فلانثروبي إنيشيتيف. فهذه المبادرة قامت بمجلات علمية محكمة فيما يتعلق بالعمل الخيري الإسلامي، قامت في إنجازات، ملتقيات. كنا في ملتقى مع جامعة اسطنبول قبل شهرين ثلاث، فصار في عندنا نشر لمفاهيم العمل الخيري الإسلامي. هذا الشق اللي حيتكلم عنه الدكتور شارق. حنصل إلى مرحلة في نهاية التقرير أو المحاضرة، وهو أعتقد الجزء الأهم في موضوعنا، وهو كيف يمكن نستفيد من كل اللي بتكلم فيه عن الدكتور شارق، وهالجامعة ما الذي يمكن أن نستفيد منه في دول متنوعة لها تجربة مميزة وجيدة في العمل الخيري، لكن كيف يمكن للدراسات والبحوث أن تساهم في تطوير القطاع الخيري في تطبيقات عملية على دولة الكويت. وأيضا بعد ما يتحدث الدكتور شارق نتطلع إلى مداخلاتكم واستفساراتكم وإثراءكم لهذا النقاش. So, Dr. Shariq, the mic is yours. I just introduce you as usually in a bad words. No, in good words. And it's a pleasure all the time to be with Dr. Shariq in this training. I told him that you will speak about the three parts regarding Lily School as a fundraising school and important school in philanthropy and charities studies. Then you will talk about the MPI. Then what should we do to say that we have a good environment in Kuwait and regarding research in this topic, which is very important. And I have to greet Dr. Ghanem al-Najjar, one of our professors, and we respected in Kuwait University as we are working now in a joint program actually between Princeton University and Harvard University in Arab Parameter, and that is led by Dr. Ghanem al-Najjar. That's what you heard about, now you see him in person. So Dr. Shariq, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Samir, for your warm welcome. I always like to tell people that whatever Dr. Samir says that's good about me is exaggerated, and whatever he said bad is not bad enough. Alhamdulillah. All that is good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I ask you for my shortcomings as we have these conversations in the next few minutes, inshallah. I want to in particular thank University of Kuwait and the Center for Gulf and Arabian Peninsula Studies for hosting me today, and George Mason University and UMR for being part of that. And Jazakallah khairan for all of you for being part of this conversation. Alhamdulillah, I will try to go through this case study and then we'll have a conversation at the end. And but please feel free to ask questions as you feel necessary. As you all know, there has been a long connection between education and research and the development of society. If you think about medicine, you think about engineering, you think about technology, you think about government, there has been a direct impact between universities being established or higher education institutions being established and then the development of society. So this isn't new. The question is, what is the role of research and universities in the development of philanthropy for any society? In this particular case, Kuwait. So what I'd like to do is first suggest two case studies, one Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, the second the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative, as case studies of what's been done in some places, and then for us to think about how can some of those things be applied to the equation here. Now, not everything can be done not everything that applies at Indiana would apply it in Kuwait, but hopefully this will give us food for thought. So first of all, Indiana University is a 200-year-old public university in the United States. And the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy is a full college within the school. In 1972, some of the leading politicians, philanthropists, industrialists, scholars came together and said, we need to professionalize the charity sector in the world. And to do that, we need research, we need education, we need professionalization of this field. So as a result of that, a family in the United States, this is the family that founded the Lilly Pharmaceutical Company, they gave Indiana University $40 million as an endowment to set up what is now known as the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And so the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy has three buckets: research and institutes, academic programs, and professional development. Now, in your brochure, in the printout, on the third page, you'll see the photograph of our building where we are there. Dr. Samir has been a visitor of ours many a times, and we are on the campus in Indianapolis, which is the capital city of the state of Indiana. In terms of our faculty, we have 19 core faculty, 21 affiliate faculty, and 6 visiting faculty. For example, Dr. Ashley and Richie is she holds a fellowship on environmental resilience. There was a question about climate change, so we thought, how does the sector impact climate change? So we hired a faculty member there. Dr. Anthony Heavens is our assistant professor of philanthropy for justice and philanthropy. There was a lot of conversations in the United States about justice and community, so we brought them in. Dr. Lane Benjamin is about community and grassroots. How can you involve the community and grassroots in? So within our school, we have economists, we have social psychologists, we have sociologists, we have public administration scholars, business scholars, so that we can focus not just on money giving, but the entire focus of the charity sector, from managing it to volunteering it, for all aspects of it. And so within our school, we have all of these people that are in the school. Now, in terms of our academic programs, we actually have 5 academic programs. We have a bachelor's degree in philanthropic studies. We have a graduate certificate, a couple of graduate certificates, so that's half of a master's degree. We have a master's degree in philanthropic studies. We have a PhD in philanthropic studies. That's what I have, a PhD in the School of Philanthropy. I also have a JD, a doctorate in law. So I have 2 doctorates. And then this is an academic, so the goal of this is that people come in, do this, and become scholars. Then we just launched 2 years ago a doctorate in philanthropic leadership. It's a 3-year doctorate for practitioners to bridge practice and policy and so on. It's a 3-year online program, and we're in our 2nd year of that program. And then we have dual degrees. We have partnerships with the law school, with the business school, with the sociology school, all the other programs to have joint degrees. What's great about our school is we're relatively a small school of less than 200 students, but the goal is to have a really top-notch student body that we can that can become leaders within the institution. And one of the cool things about our program is that within 6 months of our students graduating, they report 100% job placement. So our academic students, PhDs, go on and become professors. Our graduates are in the job market and have received, are successful in their careers. We have signature programs, like we have a full scholarship program for undergraduates. So bachelor's degree students come in, we pay for their college, we pay for their housing, we pay for them to have international education. We partnered with the Patterson Foundation to create a fellowship program in collaboration with us. The goal is, how can we bridge between our school and within the industry? In terms of our school, we have close to a $23 million budget, and most of it comes from non-tuition. So our tuition actually only represents 8% of our revenue. The vast majority comes from grants for research. So the number one area, nearly a quarter of our income comes from research grants. We have a professional development school that trains 8,000 people, and that brings in income for us. We get charity and donations, and then we have an endowment that provides a big punch. So we're kind of unique within the university system that tuition means a very small piece to us, which allows us innovation and allows us to do some things that most universities can't. In terms of our endowment, alhamdulillah, we have close to a $92 million endowment, which helps fund our school and our activities. We have some important signature projects. In the United States, you may have heard of something called Giving USA. It tells us how much money, like last year, Americans gave close to $500 billion. That's our study, and it's something we've been doing for 40 years. There's another study called the $1 Million List. Who are donors that give millions of dollars, and what do they give to? We have another one that looks at pandemic giving. We have another one called the Philanthropic Studies Panel. We have charitable giving in partnership with Bank of America of wealthy people. And we have something called the Global Index, which Dr. Samir has been a really important part of. We have a new initiative. One question we've asked is, much of research is looking backwards, right? It's looking about what social phenomena is happening, and then what does that tell us about the future? But how can we predict the future, right? And one way we can predict the future is by doing experimental research. So we have experimental economists and social psychologists that do experimental research that then help us predict behavior in the future, right? And so we have a conference in partnership with the University of Chicago called the Science of Philanthropy Initiative. One year it happens in Indianapolis, the following year it happens in Chicago, and this has been going on for a few years. In terms of our institutes, we have 3 major institutes. Women are an understudied area of research within philanthropy, but have a really important sort of role to play, according to most of our experiences and so on. So we established something called the Women Philanthropy Institute. And this institute really dives further in how to empower women, how to learn more about women philanthropy, and so on. We have the Mays Institute of Diverse Philanthropy. There are populations that people aren't studying, right? We largely focus on the few, the wealthy. But what about everybody else? So we have an entire institute on diverse philanthropy, which focuses on diverse communities. One interesting project that I love teaching into this, just because I'm a big sports fan, I love sports. We have a program called Athlete to Advocate. So as you know, in America, we have a number of professional sports, and we have a WNBA, Women NBA, National Basketball Association. So we have a program where basketball stars take a 6-week training program with us, in which they learn how they can use their influence, use their ability to be social influencers for good. How can they they do that? So if we think about the role of soccer and football and baseball, how can we turn these athletes who are major figures in all of our homes, how can they become philanthropists? Not just by giving money, but also through their influence. How can we teach them how to do that? And so I teach in one of the courses in that program. One of the things we know, at least in the United States, that the number one factor on why people give is faith, religion. But it's an understudied, overlooked piece of philanthropy. So we established, through a donation from the Lake family, the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving. It's an endowed program that focuses on looking at the intersection of religion and philanthropy. And then as part of this initiative, we also established something called the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative, and I'll talk more about that. That's the initiative that I lead. Okay, so there are a few challenges that our school, and I'd like to use these challenges as a way to think about what was the challenge and how did the Lilly School or MPI answer those challenges, how were a solution. As a way for us to think about what could be the role of research and academic institutions within the Kuwaiti charitable sector, right? So for example, the first one was the Filer Commission came together in 1972, and they said, there's a lot of philanthropy happening. There are a lot of charitable organizations. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations. But how do we professionalize them? How do we make this sector so that this is not an extension of business or government? It actually does really important work. It's not about feeding fish, but it's about teaching people how to fish. And so they, after a 3-year discussions, meetings, they decided that there were 3 important things that need to happen. There needs to be greater research, there needs to be training programs, and there needs to be academic programs within this field. And the Filer Commission's, one of the responses, Yale University started POMPO, which was one of the first programs. Grand Valley State University started the Johnson Center on Philanthropy through a grant from funding from Johnson family. And the Lilly family gave $40 million to Indiana University to create what today is the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, right? So here, there was a problem, a solution, and the immediate response was to create academic centers that could become the cradle. Now, when they established this, the Lilly School back then, nobody thought that we would have where we would be today. If you look back 40 years ago, 50 years ago, people thought this was crazy, right? Why would you want to establish a university, a whole college? Why not just a department? Why not a course? But no, they wanted to create a whole school. But if you think about where we are and the role of philanthropy today, it's no longer considered to be crazy. The Lilly School of Philanthropy is considered to be an important model that many institutions seek to replicate. If you think about our students, if you look in you'll see names of our alumni. These are top people in the field. If you think about in the Muslim community in particular, the person in charge of partnerships for UNHCR's Islamic Philanthropy Program is one of our graduates. The founder of Islamic Relief USA, largest Muslim charity in the United States, Anwar Khan, is one of our alums. The current CEO of that organization is one of ours. The Muslim Legal Fund of America's CEO is one of our alums, and so on. In Turkey, the Deputy Chief of Staff of President Erdogan, the person who engages between the presidency and NGO sector, is one of our alums. So this school now has a number of graduates that actually are leaders, from Gates Foundation to the Kresge Foundation and so many others. Alhamdulillah. Next question, next challenge was, when we created this, and a lot of nonprofit organizations were out there trying to, everybody kept coming to us and saying, there's not enough data. If we're going to be data-driven, if we're going to be scientific about our sector, we need data. So the Lilly School partnered with the Giving USA Institute and created a comprehensive study called the Giving USA. It's been going on for over 40 years. Last year, Americans raised $557 billion of charity. The vast majority, 75% of that money, came from people. It totally reframed fundraising in the United States, because in the past, whenever we thought about fundraising, we always thought about business or we thought about foundations. But 75% of money comes from people. So this resulted in a huge growth within the sector, to the point where in 1950 we only had 40,000 nonprofits. Today we have over 1.4 million, right? And half of that money comes from donations from individuals. The third challenge that we faced in the sector that the Filer Commission identified was we need to professionalize fundraising. Fundraising was largely, most of fundraising in the United States back in the 70s, over the last 20, 30 years, was done by churches and synagogues and mosques. People went on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, there was a box, and you got money. So over 50% of money, 55, 60% of money was there. The rest of the sector, food organizations, social services, education, healthcare, none of them were raising. So then the idea was, how do we professionalize fundraising? And so we established something called the Fundraising School. And the Fundraising School taught techniques, including we did training here in Kuwait. And today we train 8,000 people every single year. This school, this fundraising school, has become so popular, it's actually a major part of the revenue that the school comes. It actually is almost like a social enterprise. It's become so popular. We have certificate in fundraising management, certificate in fundraising leadership, executive leadership, a digital fundraising certificate. Because of the influx of AI and so on, 3-4 years ago, we have scholars that focus on data. Dr. Patricia Herzog works with us and informatics. 2-3 years ago, they said there's this thing called AI, and it's going to revolutionize our sector. So they created a certificate for data for good certificate. The idea being, this is coming. How do we as a sector engage with that? And so many others. And this is done in person, it's done online, it's done asynchronously, and so on. We have worked, in addition, the fundraising school does custom training. So UNICEF created a whole leadership program. We do custom training for UNICEF. Salvation Army is another one. So the Lilly Endowment just hired the fundraising school to train small grassroots nonprofits that have no staff and no budget in Indiana to sort of go through these trainings. So a whole bunch of kinds of things. And new programs that are coming in, people want, philanthropists said, we need good advisors, we need good guides. So we're creating a training program around that. Nonprofit CEO training is another area that we're developing. How can nonprofits not just focus on charity, but earned income? So we're creating a certificate for that. How can board members, trustees, be better trustees of charitable organizations? So we're creating a certificate around that. And as I said, over 8,000 people trained every single year.
Did you count the 100 in Bahrain lastly?
8,100, 8,100 now, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. The fourth challenge we found is that we need applied research. Books are great, but nobody reads them. How can we convert these so that they make a difference to practitioners? We need to bridge research, because we don't do research just for the sake of research. We're doing it because we want the world to be better. So how did we do that? The first thing, one of our new initiatives is a doctorate in philanthropic leadership. It's a 3-year program. You have to have been 10 years in the field, have to have had a master's degree. And what you do is you take a problem that society is facing and you solve it through research. So you don't do a traditional dissertation, you do an ARP, Applied Research Project, and the goal is that we're going to create new knowledge creation through this program. It's in our 2nd year, we're doing a cohort. It's an incredible program with some amazing students. The next thing is higher education traditionally has been funded through government and tuition, but there's a need for there to be philanthropy now across the world. I have a project that I'm going to Pakistan for the last 3 years. It's a USAID and the Pakistan Commission on Higher Education. So I go there, I'm mentoring 16 universities on setting up philanthropy programs, right? So over the last 3-4 years, I've been traveling back and forth. So we were called to do that, so we created a higher education and philanthropy initiative that's done convenings in Africa, because it's done convenings in Asia and the United States. How do we sort of make that happen? We actually have a new program on public policy and philanthropy. How does public policy impact philanthropy, and how can the sector guide our regulatory authorities so that they know how best to serve? Because regulations can make our sectors vibrant and robust, right? But they have to be informed. So how do we create a bridge between the sector and so on? And research is a great bridge between regulators and the charitable sector. The 5th challenge, and we see this across the world, but in particular in the United States, we're seeing that the sector is being attacked. That is it possible that the sector is doing things badly? Is the sector doing, and there's no empirical evidence that the sector is doing anything corrupt or is doing anything illegal or it's any of those things. But the public trust and perception is there. So it's important that someone look at this and try to rebuild trust in the public. And so part of that, we established the global indices of philanthropy. Global indices of philanthropy looks at what's the philanthropic environment? What are the best practices that you need for an environment? So you're not over-regulating, but you're not under-regulating. If I, as a charitable organization, know what are the best practices, I can embrace them. But I, as a regulator, if I know what are the best practices, I won't over-regulate. And the global indices now represents 91 countries, and Dr. Samer has done the report on
and
Kuwait.
Aus is one of the co-authors for Kuwait
Jazakallah
reports.
khair.
I just saw him. Aus الشاهي.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair.
كان معي في بحث العمل الخيري الكويتي أحد التقارير. تفضل.
So 93 countries. The hope is, and some countries are actually using the global indices now as a KPI to see how they can develop. So there are countries that say, let's put the global indices now as a national KPI to see how we can improve our numbers. And it's not just about a number, it's about the specific things that go into creating those numbers that create vibrant investments in capacity building, in regulations, and so on, right? Dr. Una Osili, who's our Associate Dean of Research, she routinely testifies between the Senate, in front of the Senate and Congress. She's out there publicly talking defending and actually making the argument that there's no empirical evidence. There's no evidence that charities are not transparent, that charities are money laundering, that charities are involved in anything wrong. There's corruption. There's no evidence. Research shows that charities are actually doing a lot with very little, and they're trying to do it with the very best of intentions. But sometimes, if you have less capacity, right, then you have to figure out, should I spend more money in developing an accounting statement, or should I feed someone? And this is the challenge. So her argument is, charities are not having issues of transparency because they don't want it. It's just that they don't have the capacity. So let's invest in that. So maybe government programs should fund capacity building programs so that all these transparency measures are done by the charities, because charities want to do that, right? But it's not cheap. Any time you want something, if you want an accounting statement, it costs money. If you want a report, it costs money, right? So should we take that money from the mouths of the hungry, or should we find other sources? So, but charity sector across the board, when you talk to charitable leaders, they'll tell you that we want to do all this stuff, but it's about a resource constraint. Our donors say, what percentage of your money is going to the field, and how much is admin cost? Transparency is an admin cost, right? So how do you build that? And so she goes out and talks about this to Congress so that Congress understands what it means to have all these best practices. And not saying it's not a good idea, it is, but it needs to be funded. It's a funded mandate. When you regulate, she argues, you should bring those regulations with money so that those monies then can help fund that. Another piece is post 9/11. We saw that Muslim nonprofits and Muslim philanthropy was being attacked. And largely it was being attacked because people just didn't know. So we established in 2017 the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative, right? And Muslim Philanthropy Initiative is a part of the school, and it focuses on research, education, training, thought leadership, and collaborations. One of the first things we did is we realized that nobody knew about Muslims. For example, one critique about Muslims that Muslim donors made to Muslims was that Muslims are not generous. That was one. The second thing I would hear from leaders in the Muslim community, and outside as well, this was both Islamophobic and as well as in the community, both sides. The second thing is, yes, Muslims give, but all their money goes outside of the United States. Muslims only care about Islamophobia. They don't care about it. So we said, well, let's find out. So for the last 4 years, we've done a national study using a polling company that CNN uses, SSRS. It's a national representative sample. And guess what we found out? One, we published a report, the 6 myths of Muslim philanthropy in America. Myth number 1, Muslims are less generous than the general population. Not true. Muslims actually give more than the general household. The second, Muslims only care about Islamophobia. Not true. Civil rights is not in the top priority for Muslims in America. Third, Muslims only give to Muslims. Not true. Half of American Muslim money goes to non-Muslim causes. Fourth, all of Muslim money goes out to the country. Not true. 87% of all Muslim charity stays in the United States. Number one priority for American Muslims, domestic poverty relief. And American Muslims are only 3.5 million people, 1% of the population. They are the poorest faith community in America. But despite that, they give $4.3 billion to charity, of which $1.8 billion is zakat. It's a lot of money for a very small and poor community. So we published this report. It's all on our website. It's all open source. It's all available. In addition to that, we published all these books. And these books are going to be, starting January, open access. You can download them. Well, it talks about the size, scope of giving.
What does that talk about? Dive in?
This one is Divine Money.
Divine Money.
There's a lot of, this is a Swiss anthropologist. He spent 2 years in Nablus, Palestine. And he talked about how do people in Palestine give zakat.
to sort of, and these stories illuminate people about, and it's open access, it's freely available, you can download it.
Religion and poverty.
Religion and poverty is monotheistic. It's about how Muslims, Christians, and Jews in the world fight poverty. And one of the arguments, I did the chapters on Islam, I argued that education is the #1 way in which Muslims fight poverty, right?
Non-profit organization.
How can, this was a 3-year project, how can Muslim organizations in the United States come together and work? What prevents collaboration and what fosters collaboration? So we did, it was a participatory project with 22 organizations, and we published this. Understanding Muslim philanthropy. This looks at a lot of our data and puts it in, talks about waqfs, gives case studies about modern waqfs in America, modern sadaqah, and zakat, and talks about that.
And this is the best one?
Alhamdulillah.
Why?
Because Dr. Saber wrote a chapter.
Thank you.
This has 19 Muslim communities across the world, including Kuwait, Yemen, France, US. So we've had 19 chapters from Nigeria, we had Jordan, all Saudi Arabia. What does philanthropy look like in those countries? And we published this, it's called Philanthropy in the Muslim World. But the point is, all of this data illuminates and educates. Then people told us, you're not doing enough research, all your research is on America. So then we did 6 studies: philanthropy in Turkey, philanthropy in Kuwait, philanthropy in Jordan, philanthropy in Nigeria, philanthropy in Pakistan, philanthropy in Bangladesh. And those reports are coming out, inshallah, soon. Turkey is already out. Kuwait and Jordan and so on will be out in the next few weeks. All open, free, open access, and so on. We published peer-reviewed journals, Journal on Muslim Philanthropy in Civil Society. It's Scopus indexed. We have the Muslim Humanitarians Review. All of you are doing great work. We want your case studies to be in peer-reviewed places, because if we have case studies of our success, it allows our regulators, it allows our philanthropists, it allows the world to actually see the work we're doing. But if you publish it, it's self-serving. But if we publish it, peer-reviewed, it provides more credibility. So for example, one of the case studies we published was from UK. The National Zakat Foundation in UK, we did a study on their housing project. We found out that for every $1 in zakat money on housing, National Zakat Foundation in UK spends, it saves the British government £60. Now, National Zakat Foundation is taking this peer-reviewed IU study to the British government saying, look, you should be granting money to our programs because we do it more efficiently and more effectively than you are. So these are examples of some of the things that we did. I've already shared the books that we have. I'll be sending later on the links. You can download these books. They're open access. We got some grant money to make it because we wanted to not have these books. They're too expensive to buy. So we wanted to have, so we paid the publisher, and inshallah from January, many of our books are going to be available free.
ICO, the research center in الخيري الإسلامي العالمية, they will translate it or do a book review for it.
They're going to do book reviews.
That's what we understood yesterday.
Inshallah. They're going to do book reviews, and our hope is, I have the rights for Arabic language. We're going to look for a partner, hopefully ICO, that can translate these books into Arabic and make them available free of cost. The point is we want to sort of provide this. But again, this is another, and there was a problem. The charity sector, the Muslim philanthropy sector was understudied. People were, because of mystery, there was suspicion. And we've tried to sort of unpack that through our research. We've created white papers. They're all on our website. You can look at when Muslims give, the role of women in Muslim community, et cetera, and we have all these surveys and white papers. Okay. Then in addition to that, one of the things that we found, and we were told, is that, yes.
I got it. For the Zoom meeting, okay.
Yes.
We're back now. Because we have a Zoom meeting.
That's
people,
right.
They are saying it in, seeing the screenshots, actually.
So you will see that we went around 30 countries and we trained 2,500 people on the science of fundraising and so on, including Kuwait. And our brother is in the photograph here from Kuwait. So I'm glad that you are here so you can attest that I did not Photoshop this, that this is actually him, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
Inshallah.
And then we do symposiums. Last year we did a symposium at Istanbul University in October. This year, we're doing one in Indonesia with University of Indonesia. We're doing one, inshallah, with a number of different universities. We hope we could do something like that here in Kuwait, because we feel that by bringing practitioners and scholars together and talking about research, it's a way to sort of further conversations and build the sector. And then we have collaborations. We worked with a number of institutions to sort of further our work. We have a really interesting program with Zakat Foundation Institute, which funds students to be part of our master's program. So many of the Muslim students you saw, it was because of that program. Today, a third of the students in our master's program are from Muslim majority countries. Last few years, half of our full scholarships for our PhD programs have gone to Muslim students that have come out of these programs. So we've seen some real impact between building. This year at Arnova, which is this annual conference, the Association for Research and Nonprofit Organizations, out of the 600 people in Washington, D.C., over 100 were Muslim philanthropy people, all from this network of MPI. In our dinner that we hosted on Thursday nights, we hosted the first dinner. It was me, Dr. Samir, Dr. Sabit, and one other person. This past year on Thursday, there were 64 people in dinner at this. So this shows that when you start something and you build it, it automatically grows because there's a demand, right? Challenge number 6. What is the future? The number one question that I always get asked by many charitable organizations is, Dr. Sharik, we're facing this problem. We're facing that problem. We're facing... But the reality is, our job is to help answer some of the challenges today. But scholars are really about the future, right? My question is to a lot of the people within the infrastructure when I was raising money for the Muslim Philanthropy Initiative. They said, are you going to solve this problem? I said, no. But 10 years from now, the problems that exist, that's what we're going to be focused on. But even now, we're looking at symposiums. We've launched a new initiative called the Big Ideas in Philanthropy. We're convening scholars to talk about what are the big ideas of philanthropy that nobody's talking about. Issues of power and equity, philanthropy and public policy, regulations, what's the right balance between public policy and philanthropy, right? How can we engage the community into the work of philanthropy, right? So it's not all top-down. We've had the data for good. We have Dr. Patricia Herzog working with the informatics to thinking about how is technology going to revolutionize our sector, right?
Alan Abrams in public policy. Alan in public policy.
And Alan is thinking about public policy. They do an annual symposium at George Mason University and Arnova, thinking about what is public policy? How can public policy make the sector's health better? Right? Not just it's not enough to know that it's clean. It has to be healthier. It has to be more impactful because that's going to help public policy. So having talked about this, I want to now focus on some of the questions or thoughts that I have in terms of Kuwait that we've talked about. How can Kuwait build a vibrant research-based charitable sector, thinking about some of the case studies that we've talked about? First of all, I'd like to say I'm really proud because of Dr. Samir. We've actually done initial work at Indiana University in Kuwait, right? And IICO was a big part of this, right? We have a global giving survey in Kuwait. You'll get to study that. That'll be open access. It's a national survey of Kuwaitis that will show what Kuwaiti people give to, what motivates them to give, what are their priorities, and so on. And hopefully that will help, right? That's one study. It's a report. And we hope that that's going to be converted into a book like this on philanthropy in Kuwait. We have 3 reports on the global index in Kuwait, right? Because of the work that you guys have been doing. We have a book chapter on Kuwait here that Dr. Samir wrote. And then we did the fundraising training. So we've done some work in Kuwait. It's the tip of the iceberg. MashaAllah, IICO has a whole research center that's focused on this. Many of you are doing amazing work, but there's this initial work that's being already started. But where can we go? The first thing is, I think it's really critical that while we've done the global index, we've done the global giving survey, that this continue. what would it look like to have annual household survey, empirical data on the size, scope, and nature of giving? Just like in America, we have Giving USA, how could we have Giving Kuwait, right? A study that's published every year that educates the public, the community, the regulators, everybody about that, right? Similar to what we've done. What would it look like? We have Charity Navigator, we have a number of these things. What does it look like to have a collect and publish empirical data on the size, scope, and nature of the charitable sector? And I've seen some initial great reports, like one about the report where there was this myth about Kuwaiti charities only focusing overseas. But then when someone did empirical study, I think your association, your union did some research on this, they found out that's not true. Only, I think, 60% of Kuwaiti charity goes up. 30–40% stays here. So Kuwaiti charities are actually doing a lot of great work. But until that data was published and then shared, there was a lot of mythology, a lot of perception that wasn't really effective, right? So what does it look like to have this kind of data? What does it take so that we have 40 of the leading scholars of philanthropy in the Lilly School? We have so many scholars like Alan Abramson and so on. What does it look like to have the best scholars in philanthropy here in Kuwait? It's possible. Kuwait has this amazing institution. You have great, amazing institution. But the vision is 10 years from now when we talk, we say the top scholar in social entrepreneurship, the top scholar in foundation studies, the top scholar in humanitarian work is at Kuwait University or one of the universities here. That's something that would be really cool to do, to see. What does it look like to have all of your staff to have actually degrees? They've got experience. Now how do we get them so that they actually get degrees in nonprofit management and philanthropy? It's just like we're seeing in the United States, the growing sector largely. The number one in the United States, all the public administration schools, 56% of all students in public administration schools study nonprofit management. It's the fastest growing sector. 1 in 9 Americans work for the charity sector. So this is a huge growth area in terms of economic development, but also for higher education. Right? What would it look like to have Scopus indexed or really high quality research published here in Kuwait in Arabic that's really good for you, but also good for the whole, for everybody else, right? So that's another thing. The more important thing is, in times of crisis, scholars look to the future. In times of crisis, the charity sector has to focus on the crisis. But when you focus on a crisis today, that's yesterday's problem. The future problem, that comes from scholars. Scholars look to the future. So how can we empower scholars in Kuwait to be constantly looking at the next problem? Sometimes we limit scholars by saying, no, we want you to think about today. That's part of what they should be doing, but we really need to empower scholars to think to the future. In times of crisis, the scholars can predict the next crisis, right? How can we create that infrastructure? How can we give that? That's one of the big things that we do. When we meet every month amongst us 40 faculty, we're constantly thinking, okay, what is not being studied? What are we overlooking? What's not out there? That's our interest. Our interest is what's not being studied. We fill the gaps, right? That's the role of scholarship. And then wouldn't it be great that the top school in philanthropy, this is being recorded, so I'll get into trouble, but it's not Indiana University Lilly School of Philanthropy, but maybe it's a Kuwaiti University School of Philanthropy, right? That's my dream. My dream is not one school of philanthropy, but hundreds of schools of philanthropy, including in amazing places like Kuwait. So with that, in the thing, it has our website and so on. It has my email, my phone number. I'll stop here. I know I've taken way too much time, but I wanted to just reflect through these case studies and hopefully have a conversation and and answer any questions, but also have a discussion, because you know better than I do what are the needs of this sector in Kuwait, and hopefully through your input I'll learn some more as well. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Dr. Shariq, for this trip and overview of Indiana University, Lilly School of Philanthropy, MPI, and concluding this with suggestions how can we develop any sector in any countries regarding philanthropy work and charitable work, and trying to fit this with Kuwait environment, which is, I believe, is one of the important part as we are talking with leaders in this sector. So I open it now for the floor for any questions, any comments, and yeah, we're looking forward to hear Anas, to hear Dr. Ghanem, anyone who would like. Yeah, Dr. Hassan.
You said there is some studies in Kuwait University, and there is connection between your university and Kuwait University. We did not hear about it. Kuwait University did not contact with this society at all. Not come and get our experience and make any studies. But this is the fact.
Well,
So we need some connection,
yeah.
direct with you or to
Inshallah, we'll tell Dr. Yaqub that comments, inshallah. Khabar Dr. Yaqub. But yeah, that's our pleasure.
And one thing I would say is that in our case, we are open to collaborating with any of you. But the long-term vision, and I say this as your brother, as your friend, and even as a scholar, ultimately we want to have localization, right? So, you know, for now, the Band-Aid, as it were, is collaborate with us, right, to do that. But in the long term, what is it that you guys can do to establish a really top-notch research center here to do that? That's what we want, and that would be amazing, so on. So, but we're happy to collaborate and connect. Inshallah. Thank you.
Yeah, any comments? تفضل.
يمكن انا شخصيا شدني عنوان دور البحوث والدراسات في تطوير مجال العمل الخيري في دولة. انا كنت اظن ان هناك يعني آلية ميثودولوجية منهجية شيء معين اخوان الجمعيات يعني يستعملون يطبقون في تطوير. الا اني فجأة يعني لاحظت الدكتور يعني شرح هيستوري مال العمل هذا. وهناك بس بعض الأوراق الأخيرة اللي تكلمت عن الكويت وكلها خطط نظرية يعني موجودة يعني هاي خطط نظرية نعرفها يعني مكتوب بس وين دور البحوث اللي يعني حسب ما هو العنوان نطور مجالنا في العمل الخيري ما شفت آلية الآن تكلمتوا فيها يعني يمكن هي مهمة جامعة الكويت تعطينا زبدة الدراسات خلاصة الدراسات تطورنا نظام عمل معين كلام عام كذي ما يفيد خصوصا احنا الان في وقت الصراع ما تعطيني نموذج شيء جديد انت داخل يعني وين انا نتكلم عن الآلية شنو نتكلم على دراسات دراسات بحوث دراسات معناتها فيها منهجية ميثودولوجية معين أنت تفهم مش كلام كذا أجمع أرقام وأسوي شارت لا ما أسوي شيء واضح
يا
يعني أنا الصراحة اللي نفسي الجامعة أتكلم عن نفسي شدني عنوان هذا المحاضرات من أجل أخذ عملي شديد إقراء نفسي إقراء نظرتي الموجودة تنبيه فيها فعلا شلون يستخدم حتى الآن أوجدت شيء وجدت مرة خطط نظرية
أترجم له؟
الشيء الثاني وين لها خصوصيتها لها قوانينها لها جمعيات تمشي بنظم معين عكس دول أخرى عكس أمريكا منفتحة شيء تدرس لا إحنا نفتح هذا النقطة ما أخذت بالاعتبار في كثير من الكلام كثير الكلام هذا ما أخذ ليش؟ لأن دولة لها قوانينها لها رولز مالها ماشية.
يا خليني أترجم له ولا خلاص؟ طيب. Dr. Sharif, he's saying the title, The Role of Research and Study in Development Philanthropy in Kuwait, he expected that we give him like a manual, do and don't do, suggestions how to improve Kuwait environment in research, regardless of like the general ideas that you are that we are presenting. So he wanted to give it clearly what should we do. The other point is Kuwait is unique in its regulations and its rules. So how we can customize these ideas for Kuwait. We did not take in mind that Kuwait is not like the United States.
Of course.
So how do we want to overcome these challenges? He was looking forward to more specifically or focusing on these ideas. Yeah.
Of course. And so there are 4 or 5 ideas I can give very specific, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
There are 4 or 5 ideas that I could give that are very specific, that I've seen work in different communities and so on. I think the first is that there are people in most countries, students and so on, that are doing research in this area. They just don't know where to publish. That's one of the things we found out. It's not that at Arnova suddenly I went out and found 64 people or 100 people. They were there, we just didn't know. So it's about building a community of research practice. So one thing you could do is host an annual symposium or a research conference saying we want to do research on the charity sector, and then see who comes. Make it accessible to students, make it accessible to scholars working within research centers and so on. So I think that's something specific, hopefully that within regulations is allowed. But I found that when we did this in Istanbul, they said nobody will come with 61 people, and we didn't even market it. We had to, because we had space limitations. So one piece of it is you could host an annual research convening around this. The second thing is that charitable sector could actually fund research, right? So a lot of the research that we've done has been funded by Islamic Relief, it's been funded by Muslim Legal Aid Fund, et cetera, et cetera. Charities came in and said, this is the solution, can you do this? And so then they found scholars that were willing to do this, and that's something that research needs funding, and if the charity sector can provide funding, then there's this alignment. So I think that's a second piece.
So Kuwaiti charities can fund research to answer these challenges.
Exactly.
For example,
And I'm not saying
be
fund
generous with this. So that's what he wanted to hear.
Yeah. Don't fund Americans.
For example.
I'm not saying fund Americans, but
Yeah.
fund. The third piece of it is, I think, and this is self-serving, but I think it helps for you to sponsor students to go into programs like ours, and not just ours, George Mason and others, to get PhDs in this field. For example, Malik Fahad University, King Fahad University of Petroleum and Minerals, has started a joint master's program with the Lilly School. Students do a master's, they do 2 years of study, they get a master's from King Fahad University and the Lilly School of Philanthropy. We have, the person in charge of that program is Dr. Yahya al-Zahrani, who did his PhD from the Lilly School. He's Saudi, and his PhD was on the professionalization of the Saudi nonprofit sector. Really powerful. He built a whole new scale and so on. One of my managing editor of our journal is Muhammad Mufawwaz, who's doing his PhD on the role of Islamic finance and Awqaf building in charitable sector. So they've funded students. So that's another thing. You could actually fund some of your students to actually go out there and get PhDs and bring them back. So those are 3 at least ideas that could easily be replicated, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, he wanted more specifically.
Oh, sure.
and أنا أتفق معك. خلينا نحكي بالعربي. صحيح. يعني مثلا القانون الخيري الكويتي الآن مثلا هذا خاص بالعمل الخيري الكويتي. النقاش على الداخلي والخارجي، النقاش على مركزية التبرعات وعدمها، هذه خاصة في العمل الخيري الكويتي. أنت تريد أن أحيانا تقلص العموميات اللي بنطبق على كل السكتر وتيجي على العمل الخيري الكويتي. لكن لكن لا يعني اوكي. يا جزاك الله خير. يعني أنا أتفق معك أنه مهم ندخل بالعمق، لكن الأمور العامة والمقترحات مثل إيجاد باحثين في العمل التطوعي الكويتي هذا مقترح ممتاز. كيف نقوم بذلك؟ دعم المؤسسات الخيرية للباحثين هذا مقترح صحيح عام، لكن لا يعني أنه يخلو من فائدة، وخاصة إذا اطلعت على تجربة الجامعة اللي ذكرها سواء برامج دكتوراه مؤشرات. فإحنا أحيانا يعني نعرف أنه هذه مقترحات عامة ونريد أن ندخل أكثر في عمق البيئة المحلية، لكن لا يعني أبدا أحيانا الانتقاص من هذه المقترحات المهمة صراحة، خاصة إذا كانت غير موجودة عندنا في بعض بيئاتنا العامة. That's my opinion. جزاك الله خير. إذا في أوس بعدين نرجع لك عشان نغير هذا. تفضل أوس. تفضل دكتور.
الحقيقة أوجه رسالة لجامعة الكويت دعوة أنها تهتم في العمل الخيري بعمل الدراسات. further study خلى السعودية والعراق عندهم لكن في الكويت هل هناك دراسات؟ طيب إذا كانت دراسات ليش ما تدرس واقع الجمعيات الخيرية وانتشارها في العالم وهي تجربة
He is advising Kuwait University to have more research in the philanthropy. Yeah, you're right. صحيح. متفق. صحيح. احنا we are together in this recommendation إن شاء الله. طيب دكتور
We want to partner with KU.
Yeah. تفضل أوس. نحاول نختصر.
يعني بداية شكر واجب لمركز دراسات وحضرتك الدكتور سامر على هذه الفرصة اللي حقيقة نتعرف على الدكتور شارب عن كثب. يمكن قرأنا بعض أعماله وكذا، لكن أول مرة أتشرف يعني بمقابلته بيرسونال. Sorry, I say it in Arabic.
Please. Of course.
حقيقة الفجوة هذه الموجودة في مجال البحوث والدراسات واللي أعتقد الكل يعني متفق ومجمع على وجودها، أنا يمكن استشعرتها بشكل مباشر في 2015. كنت أحضر الماجستير في بريطانيا، واخترت عنوان رسالة العمل الخيري وعلاقته في الدبلوماسية الكويتية والسياسة الخارجية الكويتية. وحزتها يعني تشرفت ان استاذي الدكتور غانم النجار عسى الله يحفظه اطلع عليها وراجعها وحط ملاحظات عليها وتالي ترجمتها، كانت باللغه الانجليزيه بطبيعه الحال، وترجمتها الى العربي وصدرتها ككتاب عن طريق دار آفاق. لكن في ذاك الوقت استشعرت حقيقه عدم وجود المصادر والمراجع المقروءه والمكتوبه، رغم اتساع السوق الخيري ان صح التعبير بالكويت. من أعرض يمكن الدول في مجال العمل الخيري على مستوى المنطقة أنه بيكون يعني العالم. سوق يتوسع. في 2015 كنا نتكلم عن 19 إلى 20 جمعية خيرية، الآن تضاعفوا 3-4 مرات وصلوا إلى تقريبا 75 جمعية خيرية. المبرات في ذاك الوقت في وقت بحث الماجستير كانوا 80، اليوم قاعد نتكلم عن 180 مبرة خيرية. الواجهات المهتمة في العمل الخيري أيضا تضاعفت وزادت. اليوم صار عندنا مثلا اتحاد المبرات والجمعيات يقوم بدراسات، يقوم بأبحاث. لا شك مركز الهيئة الخيرية أيضا مهتم. مراكز أخرى مثل فنار والدكتور خالد الشرطي الله يذكره. فاتساع السوق والديناميكية اللي حاصلة في السوق قاعد تخلي الباحثين حقيقة يهتمون أكثر ويلفت نظرهم أكثر لوجود يعني أهمية للبحث والتطوير. الR&D اللي العادة نشوفه في مجال المال والأعمال أعتقد ينبغي أن يطبق أيضا في مجال العمل الخيري. فلا شك الفجوة موجودة. في ذلك الوقت أنا اضطريت مثلا إني أعمل مقابلات وجه لوجه، فصار على قولتهم برايمري داتا كولكشن بقاموس البحث العلمي لعدم وجود يعني مصادر مكتوبة مرئية. جزاك الله خير. يعني دكتور سامر وفرت لي فرصة في مؤشر مثلا، وعملنا على مؤشر اليوم، هذه أيضا فرصة أخرى. فهي حقيقة دعوة لعلها إجابة يمكن على سؤال الشيخ الخيري الله يحفظه، أن مثل هاللقاءات هذه مجال للتشبيك ومجال لإطلاق شراكات وبناء شراكات. اليوم احنا مثلا في مركزنا سنبله للاستشارات والدراسات من شهر 8 الماضي بدأنا مشروع أن كل شهر نراجع عينة عشوائية من 500 إلى 600 شخص ندرس فيها سلوك المتبرع. هو مشروع يفترض انه ينتهي في شهر 8-9 القادم، لكن قاعدين نرصد الترندز الموجوده، هل الناس فعلا متوجهه للداخل، متوجهه للخارج، مدى ثقتها في العمل الخيري الكويتي، بعض الممارسات والسلوكيات والأنماط اللي قاعدة تتغير في سلوك المتبرع. هذه مبادرة يمكن فردية وذاتية، ما نعلم هل راح يتلقفها السلطات الرقابية وراح تهتم في البيانات، راح تهتم في الأرقام، راح تهتم في الإحصائيات. للأمانة الجو ما يدعو للتفاؤل كثير، لكن الكل قاعد يحاول انه يحط لبنه ان صح التعبير، والكل قاعد يحاول انه يساهم ان صح التعبير. هي دعوه للتفاؤل باختصار، ونعذر على الاطاله يعني.
لا لا، you give a good history and good experience. بس in English لو اعطيتنا بريف in English. طيب دكتور. You will brief him in English after that because this is important, very important. Yeah. Yeah.
ما شاء الله.
Source of data, right? So all of us, we agree that working in charity, and in this good case, of course, any work based on research, even in our daily projects, yeah, when you do something based on research, data, numbers, it's different than when you do it just without a plan, without full research. So what I would like to mention that I encourage you and invite you to consider Kuwait as a good potential for your regional, let's say, research center. Alhamdulillah, as a country, as a brand, the charity in Kuwait is part of the culture. If you see, like, if you look into all the mabarat and jamia, it's part of the culture. So it's really a good case study that you can get a lot of data, a lot of maybe things that will improve the charity in worldwide. One of the things that I would like to suggest also, if your good self and your institution can offer us scholarships in PhD or masters that we can choose from our community, we can recommend some of our students and send to you. Yeah, so we can have this bridge between your good experience and our our students. One of the things that I'm working on myself, and I'm offering all of you to think about, is AI in charity and Sharia compliance work.
ما شاء الله.
So we can see now the trend about AI. So I started to receive questions about, because I'm doing also like research on Islamic financial products. So it's really the trend nowadays. So I would like also to maybe bring this to your attention, so you can consider some maybe workshops or studies about that. And from the title of the workshop today, I believe that if we do research in charity, we should keep in mind a few elements, not only the academic side. So we're talking about regulations, we're talking about finance, we're talking about fundraising, marketing, we're talking about social impact. Business-wise, even in Kuwait, the social media impact is strong. So if you go to those influencers, yeah. So how can we also benefit from influencers? In social media in Kuwait, even if you announce a project, you can see so many charities working in the same project. So one of the things also I love about charity in Kuwait is you see all these people in front of you, they are representing big charities, but if something happens, either relief or a national project, they all work together. So it's not a competition, it's more into like a cooperation. I saw this in many projects and it's really amazing. It needs to be studied, really, compared to other countries where you find charities like competing each other in sometimes a negative way. Also, we should focus on data and numbers. So, for example, if we target Africa, let's say, with enough water wells. So let's focus on another country or another kind of projects. So if we have a central source of data, let's say in Kuwait, so all the charities can have categories for projects, countries, and people in need. So they can focus the effort. Because people have, mashallah, the sincerity to give. But after they give, alhamdulillah, there we have regulations, we have the percentage for, the administration, even fatwa by that. So we have the potential, we have the tools.
Alhamdulillah.
We have people who are willing to give. What we, inshallah, want from you and all of brothers and sisters, to put this into research-based work. We can improve.
Jazakallah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
100%.
Any quick comments before I conclude with Dr. غانم ودكتور حمدان؟ أنا لازم أعطيك. بس quickly دكتور حمدان.
أنا عندي ملاحظة صار. عدد الجمعيات الخيرية في الكويت. 84 جمعية. عدد المبادرات 95 مبادرة خيرية. توتال 179 جهة خيرية عندنا.
أوكي.
هذا رقم. هذا رقم يعني مفخر لنا.
الحمد لله.
يعني ذات التطوير.
He's talking the number of the associations.
ما شاء الله.
big and
ما شاء
that's,
الله.
شكرا دكتور حمدان.
جزاك
Thank
الله
you.
خيرا.
Anyone else wanted to have a quick comments before I move it to Dr. غانم, because I know he can conclude in 3 minutes ونختم ذاك الله دكتور غانم. Nah, I know you got all the time a good comments inshallah.
Thank you. We welcome you in our institution. This is the new campus of Kuwait University. It's been planned for over 40 years.
ما شاء الله.
Much longer time. A lot of political fights over this. So we welcome you. Your presentation of the program, I know from Dr. Samir Al-Khatib. So this is a really very serious path that is completely effective. I am the chairman of the Arab Human Rights Fund, which I would like to share today some of our experiences that is affected by the regulation, because we cannot register in any Arab country. We have registered in Holland, in The Hague, and then we have an office in Beirut. Our work goes for small non-governmental organizations, and we give them grants, small grants. And we cover almost all over the Arab world, 123 organizations.
ما شاء الله.
But then we were not able to continue because the banks will not allow us to transfer any single penny from Qatar. So we have to stop. I see what happened in Syria. I guess we played a role in that, because when we wanted to fund Syrian organizations, that was a very difficult issue. The past regime. I'm just not even imagining that the Assad is gone. But it's gone, as if that he was Saddam is gone. But we didn't even think that. So we had to deal with to change our tactic. So we don't send money in cash. It all goes back to that. But with this situation in Syria, we have to change our method. And then we had several organizations from Syria who came to Istanbul. And we gave them several training for how to conduct and observe and document human rights violations. That's our specialty. We are not working on other things. So, but human rights is a vast concept, and it covers everything, from the economics to social, everything. after September 11, things have changed dramatically. So almost all charity labeled supporting terrorism, and every twice a year the people come from the U.S. Federal Reserve come here and put pressure on Kuwait to restrict the movement. This is a fact until listen. It's not been recovered, not yet. So maybe Dr. Hamdan, when he spoke about the legality, here in Kuwait it's over-regulated. And any minute the government can close an organization. Any minute, without reason. Without reason. It's all secret. Dealing with civil society here in Kuwait, it's a highly secretive matter. So these are things that are not necessarily other places. Mostly, yeah, here the civil society, which we call the third sector, in Kuwait is more independent than other governments. Other governments, they can't really do without the permission of the government. Here it's more independent. I work on Africa most of the time, Iraq, Syria, others, and I can tell you the arm of Kuwait goes there with competition. And I would say that there is a competition. We try to make it less, look nicer, but no, there is a competition. If you have this number, there is definitely a competition. This is part of the theory of organizational theory. The competition inside the organization itself.
Yeah.
So it's how you regulate. This is the answer that when we talk about differences in society, we are talking about national unity and others. This is just out of the air. But every country, every society has differences inside. It goes beyond, maybe it goes to violence, it goes to, and democracy is an answer to regulate these differences. How would you do it? Here in Kuwait, it's better than other countries. And charity has reached, and I have supervised at least 2 masters in our department about the comparison between one of the big charity organizations in Kuwait and one in the UK. Look at the transparency. That was one thing. And I guess we failed. The comparison was not in our favor. And that needs a lot of work for it. So now the Ministry of Social Affairs put pressure on each charity that they have to get the donation through cards, through machines, through you don't pay cash now to regulate. This is over-regulated. This is too much and it affects the movement of charity. But as I said, this is started in September 11, 2001, and it is still continuing. And our government is part of the alliance against terrorism, which is well, we don't know what terrorism is. It's defined differently. So opening up the small or big questions through academic endeavors is great. And I heard about Kuwait University is not as centralized as and you will not expect Kuwait University to come and say, okay, well, there is nothing like this. It's just there. But you have departments. Each department does research, and we have plenty of research. It's published in the
journals
here, all in Arabic. A lot of them about charity work, about civil society. And if we have like some kind of a joint work and encourage research, that's how to go about it. So there is nobody in the university who will come and say, okay, let's help. No, you have academics who are interested in certain field, and I can tell you at least about 7
Yeah.
And I can tell you a lot of things, and I'll just give you example. I was in Somalia once, and we have a hospital, established a hospital, personal, right? Not institution. We have some problems with funding, but that's not an issue. So we wanted to have medical oxygen cylinder. So I went there in a city called Hargeisa. Hargeisa is the capital of Somalia. So we went around for about 3 hours looking at it. Somebody tell us here and there until we got to the place. And it was locked. I said, I want to see the oxygen. So we went to take it. And then a guy opened it, and then it was a big, huge machine. And I said, why this is not working? I said, you see, there is a small spare part that is not. I said, how much this is worth? He said, it's about $100,000. They said, okay. It's in the middle of nowhere. Nobody knows about it. And the spare part is about maybe $1,000 or less. Okay, so I said, who brought this? I said, a guy from Kuwait. Long time ago. Nobody knows who this guy is. I can tell you lots of examples.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Dr.
So this is something that we see when we are in the field.
Yeah.
Not, I am an academic, but I work also in the field.
MashaAllah.
My whole life is dedicated to help people.
Thank you,
that's
Dr.
fine.
Ghanem. Thank you.
So I think to marry the academic structure, being an academic myself, I guess will be a great help. And we can help. You know, I am a member of the board of the center here, so we will come in our place. And I'm sure that the charity organizations are doing a great job. You know, restriction sometimes good, sometimes not. And I see it from political science perspective, which is my field, not doing well. The restrictions are impeding the work, not really helping. And that, but nobody's addressing because the government has power to close any organization, and now they are closing. I'm not talking about necessarily charity, but they are closing. They have the power. The law, which was issued 1964 on civil society, covers all of that. And they can't do anything immediately. They can interfere. They can stop elections. They can dissolve board members. That's
Without reason?
without reason. Without reason. They don't give reason. They don't care to give reason. No. If you want to look at the reason, yeah.
That's why, Dr. Ghanem, in our index, Indiana index, where we wrote with Aus and 3 times, we have the first section how power the government can be on charities, and we have ranking from 1 to 5, and we say if they wanted to dissolve any of the association, they have to have an excuse, and if they do not, they will take 1 out of 5, and 5 out of 4 of 4, whatever it is. That's why the Indiana index, just to link it and finish it, when Ola goes to the Congress and she uses the data and the index, which is the best for our environment, is what is better to be the relationship between government association. طيب I'll end with that, Dr. Ghanem. طيب جزاك الله. Yeah, we'll finish. We'll
I mean, the idea is, this started to become much more problematic, and this needs it. It goes even to cooperative society. It goes to all the movement of the civil society. Now we have revoking of citizenship.
Yeah.
It's a complete power. Nobody can say anything, even if they're. So this goes to everybody. I think we can work together. The program is unique, and I guess we have several suggestions that people want to benefit from your program, getting a scholarship, and we can cooperate in having training here. No problem. We can organize this, and people can get into fundraising.
طيب, thank you, Dr. Ghanem. Thank you, Dr. Shariq. I really appreciate all the attendance today. It was a pleasure. A hard discussion, especially at the end. Thank you very much, and جزاك الله خير دكتور شارق. Thank you all, and شكرا لكم جميعا إن شاء الله. شكرا دكتور حمدان. شكرا للجميع. Yeah.